Hey, what's going on YouTube? How are you? I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for coming by. I want to get right to this. Sasquatch or Bigfoot, whichever you prefer, vocalizations. Wicked, interesting, and kind of wicked creepy a little bit. Some of the stuff I've heard, the past 2 nights, I just did a video on Bigfoot vocalizations. And last night, I spent, a couple of hours floating around YouTube. Pardon me. Floating around on YouTube, checking out different videos on vocalizations and stuff. Some of it, I'm going to tell you, is almost frightening because you can picture the creature or whatever's making these sounds or trying to talk. God, that really brings it right out in a 3D way, to see a Sasquatch through, walk through a field or at a tree line or something like that. That's one thing. But to have that audio of what they sound like, man, that is really kind of bone-chilling stuff a little bit. To me, it is anyways. So I want to just touch on a couple of bullet points, right, on stuff that stands out for me, right? So that was the first thing I had written down. When I hear some of the vocals, it makes the hair on my arm stand up. It's frightening, almost scary. I don't know. Imagine if you live somewhere and you could step out on your back deck or your back porch and your house is butted up against the woods and you can hear, wolves and coyotes barking and chirping and howling, and then you hear something that just totally blows you away. You just know the depth, the guttural yell of something that's so foreign to our ears. You know what I mean? So interesting to me. Okay, so the second thing I wanted to get, I have 7 things here. The second thing I wanted to touch on was speaking using inhale and exhale. Something I've noticed as I've listened to different videos that have supposed Sasquatch audio, the way they speak and they're talking or making these vocalizations as they inhale as well as exhale, you can hear the difference. And it's not easy to do because I tried it. I tried to give out a yell or a yelp or talk as I inhaled and exhaled. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I do know that I've seen some researchers, some stuff done, scientific stuff on vocals, our human our human vocal cords and the way that we can speak. Some of this stuff is humans can't produce some of the variations in tone and stuff like that. I wish I knew more about it, but if I spent all my time studying on vocals, I wouldn't be able to be hiking in the woods and telling you my opinion. But it's really odd. You can hear the inhale as it speaks. Really awesome to me to hear that. And again, it's kind of gives you the chills a little bit hearing some of this stuff. All right, there's audio. This audio I heard from this barn video. And I can't leave a link below because I don't know how, but I'm trying. I'm going to learn how to do that. All I have to do is just say, I'll leave a link below, but I can't right this minute. But it's like this guy's got a camera pointed out. It's set up next to his barn. And you can hear some chatter in the barn. And it really sounds almost parakeeted, like a bird, how a bird would mimic speech. And it sounds, the audio from this, I don't know what to call it, audio from the barn. Sasquatch speaks from the barn. It's actually this large, huge, it's called a barn, but it's like a garage. It's a large space. And it sounds really like it's like practicing speech. And it sounds like it's amusing itself, too, as it's doing it. It's trying. And then I thought, as I watched this video, how close is the house? Nobody's hearing this. At one point, it's speaking loud or trying to speak or using a speech pattern. It's really something to hear it. I hope you can find it. I feel so bad that I can't leave a link below because I haven't learned that with the URL yet. I will learn it. I'm really getting better at I'm doing my homework here. And when I do figure it out, you'll know because I'll have it right below here. Just so interesting to me that it sounds like it heard speech and it's trying to mimic the speech. Whether it knows what it's trying to say or whatever, I think it's just copying. I believe they have their own language, all their own. Obviously, they have to. But nonetheless, that sounds like a parakeet, like just repeating what it's heard. It must sit there by the barn and just listen at night to who's ever in the barn working or speaking to each other. Just really, really awesome stuff. Now there's more from, I think it's Ontario or British Columbia. I'm not positive. It's an interaction between this gentleman. I wish I knew it, and I'm going to do a whole nother video dedicated just to this right here, where the guy speaks and is friends with this Sasquatch, alleged Sasquatch on his property. He says, "I love you." He calls him Mike. There's so much going on there. It's laughing. You could hear laughter. I wish, when I do find out, I'm going to leave a comment at the end of this video, and I'm going to go home and find out exactly where that's from, where the thing says, "I love you," and buddy and friend, and the guy is really comfortable speaking. I know there's a cabin up in the mountains type thing. The thing leaves prints all the time. It leaves them little presents and stuff like that, little wound up vines that look like a stick figure, and just different stuff with like a rock in it, and it's wound up into like vines and tied, and these really cool presents. This guy turns his back and then turns around, and there's something right there, and it really interesting stuff. It will leave one print, or I've also seen on this gentleman's channel that it'll leave a handprint on a window of his car. Really cool stuff. He never says where he is, and I hope he never reveals exactly where he is. I want to say British Columbia, and again, I apologize for not doing my homework. I spent so much time listening to these vocals, and I wanted to talk to you guys about it, that to do I should have done more homework is pretty much what I'm saying, and I apologize. Like, I'm always doing that. Another point I wanted to bring up, the screams, distant screams, or calls. That's another thing that makes my hair stand on end. These long distance screams or calls from the forest, along with, you can hear dogs in the distance barking, and coyotes howling, and wolves howling, and just these unearthly yells and bellowous, just really guttural screams that just a human, there's no way, is going to project like that. And there are those that have talked about that video on YouTube. Again, whether they're professionals or not, I don't endorse any of that, but I believe some of it, where they say just a human diaphragm doesn't have the strength or the capability to make some of these vocalizations and like a speech pattern of their own, that they're just, and these yells that are just on another level, like a whale or an elephant, how they can use different frequencies that we really almost can't even hear it. I believe Sasquatch has that ability to just project its voice so far that we could never do something like that. So interesting. The screams too, like and the yells, it makes my hair stand up on the back of my neck. It gives you chills to know, to realize that that's real. I believe it's real, and to know that something is out there that can do this, and we're just walking around like, now, you know what I mean? Nobody realizes it except for us, except for people in this community that are open-minded to it. Just fantastic, unreal stuff. So what animal would that sound like? So you've got woodsmen out there and people that spend their lives out in the woods and that live in a cabin and can legitimately say, I don't know what that is. You've got to know if that's just a wild animal, you naysayers out there and you people that just don't believe and think that, oh, you can put a name to what that sounds like, I'm not sure if I'm on board with that. I don't think a lot of this. Listen, I didn't grow up in the forest. I'm not a mountain man. I may look like one, but I'm not a mountain guy. I didn't grow up in the mountains, but I spent my fair share of time in the woods growing up and now. And I've heard different animals, different animal calls. I've heard stuff that's, when you hear something off in the distance that sounds weird, you don't know what it is, it makes you wonder. But there's a part of me that says, hey, I might have never heard that sound before. I don't know what animal that is. When you hear these howls and screams, you know deep down inside that is not some kind of animal that is in a book somewhere in a library. That, there are people and professionals that know every sound of every animal in North America at least, and can honestly say, I don't know what that sound is. You know what I mean? If that's not evidence enough, I don't know what is. If you can't put a name to the sound, and you got these professionals that know every bird chirp, every hoot and howl and bark and snort and all of this kind of stuff, that don't know what that is, that's convincing. So the last thing I wanted to bring up was I've heard myself chatter one time, and I was out in Hockomock Swamp, and it was quite an experience. I felt herded out. I felt pushed or followed or just kind of escorted. I made my way into the Hockomock Swamp in the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts, southeastern Mass. And I was out there all by myself, and I just kind of I was only going to go out for a little bit. I ended up going much further than I planned on. I felt kind of pulled in, and at the same time, I reached a point where I felt pushed out. I turned around and started to leave, and I heard voices. I almost heard more than one really distant chatter. It almost sounded Oriental or somehow, or no disrespect, because I don't, I'm not trying to, but it had that quick, really fast movement, almost like I could almost tell what was being said, but it was, what was that? And the sound stayed constantly the same distance from me as I was walking out. I thought I was going to bump into a few people walking on the trail. Every time I turned, I thought I'd see them, and I kept hearing it almost all the way out. I had something thrown at me that day, or thrown in my direction, or something like that. But that day was a hike. I'll never forget that hike. And to hear the chatter, that very strange conversation that sounded just off, too far for my ear to recognize, but close enough that I could hear audibly some words were being spoken, but I couldn't understand what it was. Very interesting stuff, the audio that I've been listening to on YouTube of potential Sasquatch or Bigfoot speak. Very interesting. Thank you so much, guys, for coming by. I really do appreciate it. Have an awesome Thanksgiving. Save the skin for me. It's my favorite. I'll definitely see you on the next one.